So let's start from the top of page 84, 85 again. The last thing we learned was that after all the explanations, we go back to the original pasuk that the mimer is based on. It says, Veata Tetzave b'nei Yisrael, you should command the Yidden. And the mimer explains that it doesn't only mean to command, it also means to connect. You're going to connect the Yidden with Or Ein Sof. So you're providing the Yidden with their connection. But as a result of that, the Yidden will bring you olive oil, which means as a result of that, that'll enhance the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. And even though, so it means there's two things. There's one thing that Moshe Rabbeinu does for us, and there's something that we do for him. But the Rebbe says, just like in the simple pshat, who enables us to bring the oil to Moshe? Moshe himself. It's true, we're the ones that do it, but who's the one that commanded us to do it was Moshe. So even though we're the ones that are bringing oil to Moshe, but that in itself is because Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us, and he told us that this is what we need to do. So the same is also spiritually. This is what he's going to explain now. The explanation to the words that you would be mitzvah the Jewish people is that Moshe should command them and connect them that they should bring him the oil. And the explanation was that they bring the oil, even though it's coming from them, but he's the one who empowered them to do that. So this is also understood on a deeper level, that even though we said before that the Yikhoy Lecha Hashem Zayzach means the Yidden enhance Moshe Rabbeinu's spiritual level, but that in itself is because Moshe Rabbeinu gave them the power to be able to do that. Moshe connects the Yidden is ba'ofen shemamshich lehem in the sinus koyach. He also gives them the koyach. He provides them with the koyach gam al v'yikhoy lecha. Not only for them to do what they need to do, but also what they do to Moshe also is the koyach for that is given to them from Moshe. So the same applies to the Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation and the Moshe Rabbeinu in our generation. Who was the Moshe Rabbeinu in our generation? His Aveda was His Aveda was to bring to the surface the emunah that every Yid has, the emunah that comes from the etzem and neshama. So even though he provides us with that emunah, but he provides us in such a way, after that, Yavdu Avedasam B'Koyach Atzmam. The Yidden should do their Aveda in their own right. In other words, not in a way that they're totally dependent on him. He gives them the koyach that they can do the Aveda in an independent way. Vachiyu Ner Tamid, Shem Shayach B'Shinui, and their Amunah is going to be constant without any changes. Gam Mitzad Koyach HaZagluyim. That not only they have that Amunah in their essence, but even on a conscious level, they'll have the Amunah and they'll have the Amunah constantly. So we said, yes, we need to explain this. In general, and Chassidus explains that there's certain things that come from above and certain things have to come from us. So when there's a miracle, which means that the person didn't do anything in the natural order to earn money, and Hashem performed a miracle that somehow you came across a treasure of millions of dollars, and that's how you became rich. that means Hashem gave you something, it wasn't coming from you. But normally Hashem wants us to do whatever it takes in order to get that money, which is to work in the field, or to work on a job, or to work in a business. And through the work that we do, we get the money. So we asked the question yesterday, and when I do it on my own, is that not from Hashem? Right. Who gave me the hands and the feet that I can do it? Who gave me the brains that I understand what to do? Who gave me life and health that I can do it? And who arranged everything should be possible for me to do? So clearly, even though I'm doing it, but this in itself is from Hashem. So then what's the difference? If it's something just miraculous, or it's something which I have to work for to get. In either case, it's coming from Hashem. So obviously, there is no difference in that sense. It's true. It's all coming from Hashem. The difference is that it's very similar to what we said. What is the difference between miracles and nature? Nature also comes from Hashem, except it comes in a way that from our perception, the way we see it, it's following a certain natural order. But of course, it's coming from Hashem in a more camouflage way. And that's the ultimate purpose of creation. Same here. When Hashem performs a miracle and I become wealthy overnight without doing anything about it through a miraculous way, in the Chumash, it tells us one of the miracles that happened when the Jews went into Israel is that on the walls, we just learned about it in the Rambam, there appeared all sorts of discoloring on the walls, right? You remember learning about it not long ago. And what are you supposed to do when there's a discoloring that's really no good? You're supposed to break the wall down, sometimes break the whole house down. But the Gemara says that actually this was a bracha. Why? When the Yidden came to Eretz Yisrael, the nations that lived there had to run for their lives. And they didn't want the Jews to have their wealth. So they hid a lot of the wealth in the walls of their house. They buried them in the walls. So Hashem made this happen. And therefore the Kohen came and said, we have to knock down this wall. When they knocked down the wall, they found the treasure. So that's miraculous. The fact that the wall had the discoloring is miraculous. And then the fact that there was a treasure hidden in it, it's all from Hashem. But the other way is where I do the work and I earn a living, and basically what I get is in proportion to how much work I do, that means it's coming from me. But I just want to say that in reality, nothing is coming from me. Everything is from Hashem. But nevertheless, Hashem wants that I should do the work, and in a way that in context of the natural world, it's coming from me. I'm doing the work. And the same is the Rebbe saying about Amunah, that it's true that the Rebbe gives the chassid the Amunah, and then the Rebbe wants the chassid to work on his own. In other words, not to be totally dependent on the Rebbe and the Rebbe's inspiration, but the chassid should, on his own, do the hard work, the hard labor, learning, meditating, bringing, doing whatever it takes to motivate yourself to have that. Because if the Rebbe would, for example, constantly be performing miracles, you don't need much to have Amunah. It's like so easy to have Amunah when you see miracles in front of your eyes all the time. So there's a point where it has to come from us. The Rebbe is adding even that part that comes from us, even that is something which the Rebbe gives us the koyach. To give you an example, and by the way, I think we mentioned this earlier, that this is one of the key differences between Chabad and other Hasidic groups. Other Hasidic groups are not so strong in this point because they emphasize the opposite. They emphasize more how the Rebbe gives us the koyach to be spiritually what we need. And yes, we have to daven and learn, but the Rebbe inspires the Hasidim in a much more open way, especially through miracles, telling them things about the future, telling them things about the past, which means openly revealing to them godliness. And in that way, they become inspired. The Chabad way was where the Rebbe didn't openly reveal godliness. Everything happened in an ordinary way, and the main approach that was used to develop a love and fear of Hashem was actually a natural approach. I have to think and learn and meditate and understand, and whatever goes in my head stimulates my heart. To give an example before I get to the other example, there was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Majeski. He was one of the biggest chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. He's mentioned a lot in the sichos of the previous Rebbe, the sichos of the Rebbe. So one time the Alter Rebbe was visited by another Rebbe, it was named Rabbi Shlomo of Karlin. And after he visited, he asked one of the students, they should escort him. It's very respectful and honorable that when a respectful person comes, when he leaves, you should escort him. So the Alter Rebbe asked one of his students to escort him, I think 2 students. They escorted him until a certain town. And on the way, he was talking to these Hasidim, and he realized, wow, their knowledge of Hasidus is absolutely shocking. And he specifically liked this Rabbi Majeski. And he asked him, would you do me a favor and come along with me further? Came along with him, he said, okay. Came along with him. And then he started to perform open miracles. One of them was Kvitz Zaderach. We know the Baal Shem Tov a lot of times, when he traveled, would travel a distance that takes 3 days in 3 hours. And would openly just see the way they were just sort of flying through the space, which normally takes so long, they went very fast. And then he davened mincha. And while he was davening this chassid, he started to share with the chassid certain things that only a Rebbe knows, very deep secrets. And the chassid was like on such a high. And then he said to him, I'd like you to be my chassid at least for a little bit of time. And the chassid was in a dilemma because what he received from him was so powerful spiritually that he never got this from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe didn't perform these open miracles, didn't openly just inspire him and reveal deep secrets to him that normally he wouldn't be able to know such things. So he was on a high. And he had to make a decision. Finally, after thinking about it, he came back to him and he said something. It became a very famous quote in Russian. Miriam's here now, so I'm not going to say it because it's going to sound very strange. It will be nobody here in the room that speaks Russian, I can say it. But the first part of the quote, maybe you know the quote, it starts off with pan to pan. Are you familiar with that? Do you know what it means? I don't know if it's Ukraine or Russian. One of the two, I think, could be it's Ukraine. Master, right. So he said like this, the master is a master, but not mine. The servant is a servant, but not yours. In other words, you're a tzaddik and you're a master, but you're not my master. I have a master. I'm a servant, but I'm a servant to the Alter Rebbe. I'm not your servant. Which means being a chassid of a certain Rebbe doesn't mean chas v'shalom that you deny the greatness of the other tzaddik. It just means everyone has their path and everyone has their connection to Hashem through a different path. And the Alter Rebbe is my connection, therefore I'm not connecting to you. But I'm giving you an example of how a Polish Rebbe inspired a chassid. It was through revealing to him such things that are absolutely miraculous, and that lifted him, that inspired him. The Alter Rebbe's approach was no, that you have to work it on your own. So we find an interesting thing that the Alter Rebbe himself, when he became a chassid, it was also in this way. The Baal Shem Tov had many chassidim, but amongst his chassidim, he had 60 students. Each one was a very big tzaddik. Like Mazurcha Magid was one of them, and then many other Rabban Haradaka. These were great tzaddikim. And a lot of these tzaddikim, before they became chassidim, were actually in opposition to the Baal Shem Tov. And he performed miracles to make them become his chassid. I told the story more than once with the Magid about that he was told that somebody was sure that somebody in his city is shechting the meat, not kosher, for 10 years. Do you remember that story? I'll repeat it. How did the Magid become a chassid? The Magid, who was the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, believe it or not, was initially in opposition to the Baal Shem Tov. He was a big tzaddik. He had vast knowledge of Torah, and he didn't understand the Baal Shem Tov's way and his path, and he was against his way of serving Hashem. And what happened was, the person who writes the story said that he heard the story from the son of the person that it happened to. The person that happened to was one of the greatest commentators on Gemara. His name is the Pnei Yeshua, and he lived in Königsberg. And one day he was teaching a class, Torah, of course, and someone comes in and says, there's someone outside that says he needs to speak to you. And he answered him, tell him that I'm teaching Torah to a class and I can't interrupt my learning, and I'll come out after I finish the class. The messenger came back to say, but he said that it's urgent. He went out. And he said to him, I want you to know that the shochet who slaughters the meat in this town for the last 10 years has been slaughtering the meat in a way that it's treif. And not by mistake, intentionally. So you have to correct it. And he looked at him in shock. And he said, how am I ever going to prove such a thing? He says, you call him in and you tell him what you think, and you will see that he will admit his sin. And before I had a chance to ask him, who are you? What's your name? How do you know what's doing in my town better than me? He drove off. So even though he drove off, but after hearing all the stories that he heard, he was convinced this must be the Baal Shem Tov. Sure enough, he called in the slaughterer, and he told him whatever he thought, and then he broke down, and he said, yes, it's true. I don't know the reason why he did it, and he had to correct everything, tshuva. And a few months later, he's giving a class, and again, someone walks in and says that someone's here again, who wants to speak to you. Same person like last time. This time he went out right away. And he said to him, Dov Ber, who the Maggid of Mizrich, he comes to you to visit. Tell him that he won't be able to be healed completely unless he comes to me. Again, before I had a chance to say, who's me? He drove off. And the Maggid of Mizrich was lame, his foot, his 1 foot or 2 feet. There was a problem with his walking, he was crippled. He used to walk with crutches. So when he came, he was a student of this person called the Pnei Yeshua. And he said to him, told him what happened. He said, what do you think? Should I go see him? So he said, I think you should go see him. And he told him the story with the slaughterer. But he said, do me one favor, after you go to him, come back and tell me what happened. And he came to the Baal Shem Tov, and that's how he became a chassid. And he said to him, when he came back to this teacher, he said, but you always had so many questions about him, and why is he doing this, and how is he allowed to do that? And he said, all these questions before I met him. Once I met him, and once I heard from him, and I saw him, it is shocking for me to even believe that he's actually a physical human being, not some angel. The vast knowledge that he has, and the holiness that he has, it's beyond anything I could possibly comprehend. And he became a chassid, which means the Baal Shem Tov performed a miracle in order to bring him in to become a chassid. He reached out to him and brought him in. And then there's another famous story with somebody who was called Rabbi Yosef of Tulna. He was one of the first Hasidic masters that wrote a book on Hasidus called Toldos Yaakov Yosef. And he was one of the oldest students of the man. He was also a very big Rav, and he was also in opposition to the Baal Shem Tov initially. And there's a long story, just to make the long story short, how did he become a chassid? He had someone in his town that one of his son or his daughter, I guess his daughter got engaged to a boy who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. So the wedding would be in his town, and the student wanted the Baal Shem Tov to do the wedding ceremony. So he came to the Rav and said, would you be okay with it? The wedding is in this town, and in this town, the other rabbi, the Baal Shem Tov, is going to be the Rav. If you really don't feel comfortable, I can just make the whole shidduch null and void, and it won't happen. That's it, because they want only the Baal Shem Tov to be the rabbi who's going to do the marriage. So he said, Chas v'shalom, I'm okay, let him do it, I'll be fine, go on with the wedding, go on with the shidduch, and so on. The day came, the wedding took place, and he's sitting in his house and he's learning. And for whatever reason, he couldn't concentrate on his learning. And going back and forth, because he had a thought in his head, listen, Baal Shem Tov is in town, and I'm always speaking against him, right? I'm in opposition to him. Now's my opportunity to meet him and see, am I right to be against him or not? maybe I should go. And maybe not. Maybe I'll just be wasting my time back and forth and back and forth. But he saw he can't concentrate on the Gemara, so he went. The wedding was taking place, and he went into the shul to a window, and from the window he was able to see the Baal Shem Tov and hear him. And he said, "Great, I'll be hiding here. No one's going to see me. No one will pay attention to me, and I can listen to what he's saying and to hear what I think about it." And suddenly he hears Baal Shem Tov talking about him, and he says, "I want to tell the people in this city that your rabbi is a very big tzaddik, except for two incidents that happened." And he tells the incident. The one incident was, it was a very hot day, a lot of noise going on in the house. So he went up to the attic to learn Torah there, that nobody should disturb him. But on the attic near the roof, it was very hot. It was so hot that he got extremely thirsty. So he went out to look for some water. There was a water carrier that was going to bring water to someone. And he stopped him and said, "Could you please give me some water because I'm in a rush?" And the water carrier said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm delivering water to somebody, I'm in a rush." And he was very upset, and he rebuked him for not stopping and giving him water, the Rav. So Baal Shem Tov said, the truth is that this person who was a water carrier was actually a hidden tzaddik. And he was going to bring water to another hidden tzaddik, who was just as big as a tzaddik as him. He didn't know that, but rebuking him was really out of place because he was really a hidden tzaddik. That's one thing that he had against him. Another thing he said once, it was Tisha B'Av, and this rabbi of yours was sitting and crying about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and he was so sincere and it was so deep, it was coming from such a deep place, that the heavenly court said, in that merit we should bring Mashiach. But then the Sultan came and said, don't make such a ruling so hasty. Let me do one more test. And he came down dressed as a person, and he walked over to him and said, "You look so exhausted, you look drained. I'm very afraid that something's going to happen to you, so I think you have to eat something because your life is in danger. You're fasting and you're so drained from all the crying. Here's an apple." And he said, "No, I'm not going to eat on Tisha B'Av." But he said to him, "But your life is in danger." And they're going back and forth and back and forth. And he was extremely convincing, and finally he convinced him to eat the apple. Took the apple, he made the bracha, but as soon as they made the bracha, he realized that who's standing in front of him is not a regular person, it's a power of impurity, it's a klipa. And he screamed at him and said, "Say tameh," it's a term which is used, klipa, disappear. And as soon as he identified him as a klipa, he disappeared, and the apple disappeared. But he was very broken because he did make a bracha for no reason, in vain. Baal Shem Tov was telling the story, and he's listening, and he's thinking, how in the world does he know this? There's no way in the world that he can know these details. And he goes on to say that he had a dream, and in the dream, he saw what he needs to do in order to correct his sin and to be accepted by Hashem. And he was doing it, and it's still not helping. And I want him to know that the only way that he could have his tshuva complete is if he comes and starts learning Chassidus with me. And then he said, after that, he knew he has to be a tzaddik because there's no way in the world that anybody could have known what went on in his personal life and what he dreamt and all the details so precise as if he was there. So here's another story. Baal Shem Tov performs this miracle, inspires this person to become a student. Now let's look at the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe his father was a chassid, his mother was a chassid. So what naturally should be, he should also be a chassid. Baal Shem Tov gave orders to the parents, they should not tell the Alter Rebbe about the Baal Shem Tov and about Chassidus. And the reason was because he wants them to get there on his own. And that's actually what happened. When the Alter Rebbe was ready to go study in the yeshiva, at that time the Baal Shem Tov passed. And once the Baal Shem Tov was nostalgic, they told him about the Baal Shem Tov. And then he had a choice which yeshiva should go. He could have gone to Vilna, which was the Lithuanian headquarters, or Bezrich, which is the Hasidic headquarters. And the Alter Rebbe had a real debate in his mind. At the end, he went to the Bezrich, and it wasn't so simple. He left, he wasn't so happy, and then he came back, and he became a Chassid eventually. But how does it make sense? Here, the Baal Shem Tov is dealing with people who are against him, and he goes ahead and performs miracles to inspire them to become his Hasidim. And the Alter Rebbe, who naturally would have been a Chassid, because that's his father and his mother and his uncle and his family, they were, secretly Hasidim, but they were Chassidim. And Hashem gives orders, don't tell him anything about it, because I want him to get there on his own. So the Chassidim explained it. The reason is because that's the Alter Rebbe's path. Alter Rebbe in the future was supposed to pave a new way in serving Hashem, which is teaching Chassidus, but in a way that it has to come from us. So the Alter Rebbe came to Chassidus through his own effort, right? But then there's another sikha that says that Baal Shem Tov said that he davened 3 times a day for the welfare of the Alter Rebbe, and that the Alter Rebbe should eventually become his chassid. So that means the Alter Rebbe did it on his own, but at the same time, the Baal Shem Tov was the one who was praying for him and giving him the koyach that he should be able to do what he needs to do on his own. The same as with us, that the Rebbe gives us a munah, but we have to do the avodah on our own. So Chassidim explain that this maimer that the Rebbe gave us, which was 2 weeks before the stroke, was actually because that's the era that we were going into. Up until then, the Rebbe spoke. When the Rebbe spoke with all the excitement, with all the fire and all the inspiration, it inspired us. Just hearing the Rebbe speak about Mashiach, about goodness and about where we are, and speak with such conviction, with such certainty, it gave us a lot of koyach. People wrote to the Rebbe and they got answers. People went over by dollars and poured out their heart, and the Rebbe gave them brachas, and we saw miracles happening. All these things, even though we still had to do what we had to do, but clearly the Rebbe was carrying us in such an open way. That was our source of inspiration. A person could come to Fabrenga and then with one wave of his hand did something that everybody should be singing, and you just get carried away and you lift it and you go out of your sadness or depression or whatever is on your mind. That's disturbing. But unfortunately, in a time when you don't see all this, how are we holding? And the things that are going on in the world are not so pleasant. And in fact, in recent times. So here in the Maimah, before Chavzayin Adar, what did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe gave us this Maimah. In this Maimah, it talks about how a Rebbe gives us emunah. On the other hand, the Rebbe says we have to do this Avodah on our own. But you should know, even though you're doing it on your own, you're still getting koyach from Moshe Rabbeinu to do your Avodah on your own. So it's not totally on our own. We have the sort of the strength that we get from the Rebbe, but at the same time, it is relatively on our own because we don't see the Rebbe, we don't hear the Rebbe, we don't have his inspiration openly, we don't get answers to questions that we have, and all the things that we had before that openly inspired us. So in a certain way, it's so much harder. But on another level, this is actually the ultimate, highest level of serving Hashem, that it comes from us. And through this, we merit the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, and then we'll see godliness revealed, not just because of Hashem, but from our perspective, through our Avodah, and then we'll bring the oil, not just spiritually, but begashmis, we'll bring it in the base of Mikdash HaShlishi, in the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, and it'll be B'Karav Mamash. So, this is the conclusion of the Maimer. I'd like to go over in the back. We have a summary of each ois. You can see the whole Maimer in a bird's eye view. Maimerim, you never got in the first place?
But someone moved the papers.
So we discovered a lot of them on the desk in the other room.
Is it in the middle? No, it's supposed to be. Is it this one?
Just see if it's Russian or a different language.
No, we're writing English.
Okay, Baruch Hashem, reunited. Okay, so let's go through this together. I'm looking at page 55. This is the summary of the mimer. We'll read it together. Get a clear picture of the whole mimer. And then tomorrow, Mir Hashem, we're going to start learning about Purim from a Hasidic perspective. So the first ice in the mimer, the Rebbe asked 4 questions on the pasuk, Veata Tetzave. So the first question is, why does it say Ata Tetzave, you shall command? And that means as if Moshe is the commander, but Moshe is really just an agent of Hashem. The second question is, why do the Yidden bring the olive oil to Moshe? They should bring it to Aaron. He's the one who lights the menorah. The third question, why does it say Kosis Lamor, crushed for light? I mean, it should have said Lahoir. That means crushed to give off light, not Mor, which means the luminary, the source of light. And the answer to all these 3 questions are, the answer to question number 1 is, Tetzave means not just command, but also connect. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu's mission, to connect us to Or Ein Sof. And the second question is, why bring the oil to Moshe? That means that when Moshe inspires us, we also in turn add and enhance Moshe Rabbeinu's spirituality. And the third thing, why does it say Kosis Lamor? Because Mor is the essence of the light. And when we're crushed, it reveals the essence of the light within us. Why does it say Ner Tamid? And the other pasuk, it says Merabat Beik. I didn't explain this part because that was in chapter 11. So I sort of skipped it. But I think I could explain at least the answer to this. One of the differences between the 2 levels of the essence is, if it's the superficial level of the essence, then when you're in Russia, when you're being oppressed, when there's something attacking you and challenging you, your essence is revealed. And once that's over, you become more relaxed because the essence is no longer revealed. And that's how the Rebbe explains why Yidden who lived in Russia for many years and had Mesiras Nefesh, which means they did Torah Mitzvah with Mesiras Nefesh, you would expect that when they come out of Russia, the Torah Mitzvah would be super, super Mesiras Nefesh, because there's nothing blocking anymore. Now you can do even more. But yet, strange enough, we find that a lot of people, they became more relaxed than when they were there. Why? Because what they did there was because of the essence. And the essence is only revealed when there's darkness, when there is opposition. The other level of the essence is revealed when there's darkness, and it's also revealed even in a time when the things are good and godliness is revealed. The person is nevertheless crushed for the mere fact that we're in Gullus. That means it's there by day and by night. So the Rebbe explains this is the difference in the pasuk. Look at number 4 here on page 55. One pasuk says it's an eternal light. The pasuk doesn't even mention a difference between day or night. The other pasuk says the light burns from the night till the morning, which implies that there's a difference between nighttime and morning time. The essence, which is revealed through oppression, there's a difference. During nighttime, it's revealed. During time that it's dark, it's revealed. But when it's light, it's not revealed. The other one says Ner Tamid, which means an eternal light. That means that the essence, which is the deepest depth of our essence, that is always the same. Makes no difference if it's time of challenging times or positive times. The essence always wants to be connected with the essence of Hashem. And that's why it says Tamid. It doesn't even mention that there's any difference between day or night.
An example of that what that looks like.
Again, the example, what it looks like, the way it's in this mimer is that the person's burning desire for Geula, for Hashem's essence, is even in a time where it's daytime, meaning things are good, things are revealed, godliness is revealed, and nevertheless, the mere fact that I don't have the essence of Hashem crushes me. That means that this essence of Hashem is revealed even in times that things are good. Because otherwise, why would I feel this way?
Now,
That's now, yeah. When we say godliness is revealed, everything is relative. It means revealed in a way that it's not like times where we're being oppressed and times where we're being challenged and times where we're being prohibited from learning, davening, doing mitzvahs. So the truth is like this. It's not just Russia. If you think of it, the times we're living in now is more or less unprecedented for the 2,000 years of history. Let's say when the Beit Hamikdash was destroyed by the Romans. In Rome, the Jews were oppressed. And later they went to other countries. In Morocco, they were oppressed. In Spain, they were oppressed. In Italy, they were oppressed. In France, they were oppressed. You know how many times in France there was decrees, and in France they took all the Jewish Sfarim, put it in the square, and they burnt all the Gemaras, anything Jewish, any Torah book. So Yidden were being oppressed in all these countries. There was never a time in Jewish history like today that the majority of Jews, where they live in the most places in the world, have all the freedom for davening, learning, and mitzvahs, and all the freedom, begashmis, no restrictions, no different rules for Jews than there is for non-Jews. And if you try to do that, there's an uproar, discrimination, you're not allowed to. There's no such thing. I mean, I could scream discrimination, but the government would never support that. Now the government support that you can't discriminate someone because he's Jewish. There was never such a thing. It was natural. There were places Jews can't live. There were jobs Jews couldn't get. They were even in a city where they could live, they had to live in a ghetto in a lot of places. All these restrictions, that means that relatively speaking, now godliness is more revealed than it was then. Then in chapter 3, he talks about the two interpretations of Raya Mahemna. Sorry, running ahead. He's calling about the meaning of Raya Mahemna. Sorry, it is. Two interpretations of Raya Mahemna. One is that Moshe is a faithful shepherd, and the other one that he feeds us with Amunah. He internalized our Amunah. After that, in chapter 4, the Rebbe speaks about the fact, how is it possible that in the times of Achashverosh, the Yidden accepted the Torah, and in the times of Har Sinai, they didn't accept the Torah fully. And the answer is, and here the Rebbe introduced this concept, that when Yidden are crushed, that reveals the essence. That brings Mesiras Nefesh. Now in chapter 5 is where the Rebbe introduces the two levels of Amunah. One Amunah comes because the neshama sees godliness, and the other one is because the neshama is one with Hashem. So in ordinary circumstances, the Amunah comes from the neshama seeing godliness, but in general, when a person is ready to give up his life, that comes from the deeper level of Amunah, which is that the neshama is one essence with Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu reveals that within us. But not only Moshe, also every tzaddik in every generation has the Moshe of that generation. Then the Rebbe says that this means that the Amunah that Moshe Rabbeinu reveals to us in the Golus generations is even more than what was revealed in Moshe Rabbeinu's generation. Because in Moshe Rabbeinu's generation, there was no need for Mesiras Nefesh. So the Amunah came from the lower level of the essence. In our generations, it comes from the higher level of the essence. Chapter 8. The Rebbe again explains the sequence of the Maimer, how one thing leads into the other. And in chapter 9, here's where the Rebbe starts talking about the two interpretations of when did the Yidden accept the Torah fully. Was it during the decree or after the miracle? And the Rebbe explains both are true. One of them is accepting it because of the oppression, and the other ones they accepted because everything was so good. But how does that help us if the essence is not revealed? So the Rebbe explains in chapter 9, that the essence is revealed because the person is crushed to the core, that Hashem's essence is not revealed. That feeling that I'm crushed to the core and I can't live without Hashem's essence can only come from one place, the essence of the neshama. So therefore, when we shout out Masai, again, At least we act this way, that we're shouting at Mosai and we need Mashiach and we can't wait another day, we can't wait another hour, we can't wait another minute. This is a manifestation of the essence of the neshama that can't live without Hashem. And by the way, even if a person is screaming for Mashiach because someone's sick, someone's poor, someone is suffering, and I want the suffering to stop, again, that's on the outside. But deep inside, that outcry for Mashiach is coming from the fact that the essence of the neshama can't live without having the essence of Hashem revealed, and is therefore is screaming, and we want Mashiach now. In chapter 10, the Rebbe goes on to explain that the fact that the neshama is crushed in good times reveals a deeper essence, even when the neshama is crushed from times of oppression. Okay, we shall stop now.